We will be discussing Margaret Olivia Little's The Moral Permissibility of Abortion and Sidney Callahan's A Case for Pro-Life Feminism. We will be reviewing both the arguments and seeing how they fall in an all things considered approach. An all things considered view over this central issue presented through two separate arguments would include analyzing this issue through Kantianism, utilitarianism, feminist care ethics, and virtue ethics. Starting with Little, her argument was focusing on the pregnancies in the first half of gestation, when a UDH lacks many of the full features of personhood. Little argues that given the extreme intimacy and the long-term impact of pregnancy, abortions are always morally permissible. Though, for some trivial reasons such as fitting in a dress sooner rather than later, which is an example she gave in her article, could be denounced or demoted or stated as indecent. As she argues, there is quite the difference between decency and moral obligation. So, as Little presents it, she believes in abortion as being fully permissible, widely decent, and indeed can be honorable. She also brings up many of the issues and hardships of pregnancies, the medical, social, and personal issues which would make abortion acceptable. She also uses the example of a soldier going off to war, and how a woman could provide the virgin soldier with sex, but it would not be an obligation. Little says that it would be kind of her, but she is under no moral obligation to do so. This can be related to a pregnancy. The woman would be nice to carry out the pregnancy, but is under no obligation to do so. Moving on to Callahan. Callahan has a seemingly opposite outlook on abortion. Callahan argues that the wide accessibility of abortion is inconsistent with a maternal thinking or feminist care ethics, and actually undermines the case for equality among genders. Permissive abortion treats a UDH in a way that is inconsistent to nurturing and inconclusive of protection of the weak. This suggests that a UDH is valued depending on the recognition of the power, and similar to the way how in the past women's value depended on the recognition of men, giving men a higher position in society and allowing women to be treated more like property. We see this again as women show a masculization over the UDHs and determining their value instead of recognizing them to be equally valuable. So, this argument of Callahan's practically classifies the users and advocates of abortion as hypocrites. Callahan states that having a baby is nothing like rescuing a drowning person or even being hooked up to a famous violinist, as Thompson argued. Callahan does not believe that any analogy can accurately compare to the reality of a relationship that a UDH has with its mother. The argument that I believe had a superior impact through an all things considered approach would have to be Callahan's A Case for Pro-Life Feminism. While Little reminded us of the several issues and burdens that comes with a pregnancy, such as the medical, social, and personal issues regarding the pregnancy and why an abortion is acceptable in every state, she did also bring up some very good arguments as to why it was so, through analogies. Although I believe that Callahan covered more details, such as what feminism really stands for. Callahan also undercuts several of the opposing arguments and even brings up the veil of ignorance. Callahan argued that if everyone was placed under this veil, many misinterpreted that if you were a woman, you would not want to be forced to maintain an unwanted pregnancy and would prefer the freedom to terminate it. Callahan points out that many have forgotten that under the veil of ignorance, they would not know if they were in fact the UDH and would in fact not advocate for abortions, because that would imply that they would be at risk of being aborted and not being able to continue living. Callahan even discusses later in the article how abortion promotes illegitimacy of fatherhood and how sex within only committed relationships has several advantages over the common masculinization of sex. Callahan points out that in reality, the pro-choice advocates treat sex as a casual occurrence. Meanwhile, the true feminist model promotes monogamy and parental responsibility, of which Callahan argues for. These are some of the reasons why I believe Callahan's argument is superior to Little's when comparing each argument under the all things considered approach.